Welcome today to the second session of our leadership series. And today I'm going to welcome you. And first of all, introduce myself. I don't know if all of you were present last time, but for those of you who were not with us about 2 weeks ago, I think, I'll introduce myself. My name is Carolina Lopez Paz. I am a passionate coach. I do coaching one-on-ones, and I also give workshops. And in addition to that, I am a lawyer. I did my law school degree in the Netherlands, and I did my coaching degree online partially, and also at Colombia and Chile. So today I want to welcome you because we are going to be speaking about the art of listening for effective leadership within our leadership series, and this is, as I said, session 2 thereof. I am very sure that the image that you see right here is not an image which is strange to any of us. I'm sure that you actually have experienced this, or you have seen somebody experience this at some point in your life. Maybe not with this type of phone though, because we don't have this anymore, but for sure with a mobile phone. So as you see here, you can see this guy who is like screaming at the phone, and I assume that he's probably doing this because somebody on the other side of the line is actually not listening to him, right? So this is something that that we experience, and therefore we're here today to discuss actually. And that's the objective of this session, is to discuss 3 strategies and other tips to become a conscious listener for effective leadership. And the emphasis falls here on the word conscious. Conscious meaning being present in the moment when we are having a conversation with the other person and we are the listener. That's one thing. And also on conscious about the fact that when we are speakers and not the listeners, there's another person listening to us. So we're going to be discussing today the art of listening from probably 2 points of view. One point of view is from the point of view of the speaker, because we are the ones who are in control of the way we speak, and another one, the second one, of the listener, because we're in control when we are in a conversation of our ways of listening. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. And then because we're talking of leadership, if you were here with us last time, we started also by defining what actually leadership is. So according to Maxwell, leadership is influence. And according to Kevin Cruz, who wrote in Forbes, leadership is a process of social influence, not authority nor power, which maximizes the efforts of others towards the achievement of a goal. So when you read this sentence, it seems like there is so much information in here. But to me, and what I think is most important, and where the emphasis of this sentence is in social influence and the maximizing of the efforts of others toward the achievement of a goal. So just keep that in mind. What does that actually mean? That when we're talking about leadership, we're talking about relationships, we're talking about working together, and we're talking about somebody within that team who does or has a role as a leader and who actually influences others so that they can achieve their best potential, so that the whole team or those people can achieve the best results in whatever that they're doing. We do all of this based on communication. And communication is within the heart of our whole lives, actually. It's the conversations. Everything that we do based on conversations. When we talk about leadership, that's of course the delegation of tasks. That is of course the motivation of people within groups to achieve a certain goal. But it goes also beyond leadership, that type of communication and the conversations that we have. So why is this important? Because effective communication and listening is essential in leadership to foster understanding. If in leadership there is no understanding, then we're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to make agreements about the dates that we need to deliver our reports for a certain task. We are not going to understand when we talk with somebody that person actually needs probably more support, or why the other person is not listening to us, or is not able to be open to a conversation or whatsoever. So the effective communication and the listening, which is part thereof, as we will see in a little bit, is basically to really foster understanding between two people. And as we spoke last time, during our first leadership series, we were speaking about, or we were having a conversation actually about being the observer and what that actually meant. Observing our own way of being, observing other people, being really aware and being present of how do we feel, what our posture is, and the ways, the words that we are using, and also paying attention on those same components of the other person. So when we talk about communication, the heart of the communication is basically our conversations. And the components of the conversations, as we also said last time, is one, language. And within language, we've got the listening, we've got the speaking, and we've got something very important, which is the silence. We've got the second one, and that is emotions. That's also a component of a conversation, because our emotions will actually tell us whether it's the right moment to speak to somebody or not. It will give us an indication of where somebody is about. You know, if you, for instance, have just had an exam and you're not, you don't agree with the teacher's grade or the grade that you actually received for that exam, and you want to go and talk to your professor or the teacher about that, and what you want to achieve is actually having a higher grade, a better result. So you're definitely not going to do this in a moment where the professor of the teacher is, where you can see that he or she is super angry, right? Because if you do that, the teacher or the professor is definitely not going to listen to you. He or she will not want to pay any attention, and you're probably going to get a no just from the get-go. So it's better not to even try, and to look for the moment when it's actually a proper moment to do this. So that's an example of when the emotions are, for instance, very important within a conversation. And your posture. As we saw last time, you cannot be a leader and not, for instance, have a straight posture, being open, but instead of doing that, being just very closed, having your shoulders going to the front of your body, looking down the floor, that's not the way you're going to be wanting to lead a team, right? You need to have the right posture for you to carry that conversation. So now we're going to be focusing on the first part, the part of the language, because as I said, language consists of speaking, it consists of listening, and it consists of silence. So what is actually listening? Let us see what listening actually is. And there is a difference between hearing and listening. And hearing is when you hear music. Let's put it in very, very simple words. When you hear sounds, not music, because music, you will also listen to music. But when we hear sounds, right? You hear the door opening and closing, and you hear a sound. You can understand that the door opened and closed. Or when you hear, for instance, two cars hitting each other, there's a sound that comes out of that. But listening is far more than that. It has some of the components that you guys just mentioned. And mainly listening is actually hearing plus interpreting, and that we call that perceiving. So listening is hearing plus interpreting, and that is perceiving. It's the conversion of the sounds that we hear, the words, the sentences, in combination with what we actually see and what we actually feel. And when we do that, for instance, if you would ask me, Carolina, how are you doing today? And I tell you, I'm doing fine. I'm sure that there's something you perceive there. Or in comparison with if I would tell you, I'm doing fine today. Do you notice the difference? You notice the difference not only because you heard the words, I am doing fine, but there was a difference because there was an facial expression. Sorry, there was a posture, there was body language. And from that, you can start interpreting actually what fine means to you, what fine means to me at this point in time. And when we interpret, that this is something that we looked at it last time. When we interpret, we're doing that from our own world. We all live in these bubbles, actually. We all have our own little worlds. And our own little words consist of our upbringing, of the country we lived, of the type of parents we had, of the school that we went to, the boyfriends, girlfriends that we have had. It consists of all of our history, but it also consists of our present moment. Who am I today? And it also has a view into the future. What is my expectation? So all of that gives us all the components for us to start interpreting something from our own point of view. So when we're listening to another person, we perceive, we hear, plus we interpret, and then we interpret that from our own world. Okay, just keep that in mind for when we're going to have, when we're going to carry on with this conversation. So the active or the conscious listening is, it influences everything in our lives, because it's the center of how we do leadership. How well do we listen to other people when they talk? And how well are they listening to us? It influences our relationships. It influences the way we learn. the depth of our learning or in the speed thereof, and also our personal development. And it influences our interaction with other people, even with the people who actually we don't even know. So when there is no conscious or active listening, when there is no conscious listening, there is no effective communication, because you're simply not going to hear and listen and interpret that which the other person told you. And if you have, and there is no effective communication, there is also no effective listening. So I think if you were here last time, that you will remember this picture, which is a picture that we're gonna keep on continue using, because we already have that camera in front of us, which helps us being the observer, which helps us being aware of our emotions, of our language, of the way we're hearing and interpreting, the way we're listening. And we also understand that we all live in our own little bubble, that my bubble is different than yours. And because of that, we already understand that nobody can claim that there is only one truth. And this is a beautiful illustration of that the facts, and this is one truth. The one truth is that there is no one truth. That's the only truth in reality. Because the person who's standing at the right side of the screen of this picture is going to be looking at a 9, and the person standing on the opposite side is going to be looking at a 6. And that's with everything in life, or at least with most things. Why? Because we all see it from our own little world, from our own perspective. And that from that perspective is that we interpret everything that is around us. We give it our own color. All right. So here, when we're talking about listening, we see, as you can see in this picture, you see a speaker and you see a listener, right? Because we cannot be listening if there is no one talking to us, basically. Other than, of course, if we're listening to music or something else. But if we're talking about a conversation, somebody else needs to be the speaker, and then the other one is going to be the receiver of that which is being spoken, the listener. And can you tell me if you remember the last time that you felt that either somebody was not listening to you, or when you did not listen to somebody else? What do you often do? Do you often think, or do you tend to think that it's your own fault, that it's you who was not listening? Or have you been in a conversation where you actually very often have told a person, well, you're actually not listening to me? Have you often told the other person, you are actually the one who is not listening to me in this conversation? Just type a yes or no in the chat box so that we can see whether that often happens to you or not. So the question is, have you been in a conversation where you tell the other person, you're the one who's not listening to me? And I see here, yes, yes, yes. 3 yeses, 4 yeses, 5. So 5 out of 26 people, in any case. We'll see, 6, 7, if I'm not mistaken, at least. So there has been no one who wrote down no. So it has indeed happened to us. And this is what we do when we're in a conversation and the conversation is, the listening is ineffective. We always tend to point fingers at the other person, right? Why is that? Because we often tend to think that it's the other person's fault to start off with. And we don't really take responsibility for our own actions. Our camera, as we said it last time, is switched off. We haven't paid attention on what it is that we are doing or what we are not doing that is influencing our conversations. So the first thing and the first important aspect is this one right here. And we spoke about this last time as well. And for as long as I do this leadership training, I will be coming back to this slide. Because the key in a conversation, and probably the key in life in general, is actually taking responsibility of our own actions. It's taking responsibility of our own development and our own capacity to transform what we do, the way we act, so our behavior. Why is this important? Because we need to understand that when it comes to transformation, when it comes to changing behaviors, when it comes to doing this, we have a higher percentage of having influence first and foremost on ourselves. And that is 50% of the work or of the possibility to transform. There is only a much smaller percentage when we're going to think, or actually to being able to influence another person so that they can transform themselves because of what we have said. So the focus is always going to be, what am I doing or what am I not doing that is causing that my conversation with the other person is not effective? And when I ask that question, I'm going to be taking that responsibility. And so that I ask that question, first of all, I need to be the observer of myself. I need to be the observer of my actions, of my language, of my posture, so that I can transform that in order to have effective communication and effective leadership. So the question is, and this is one of the parts where I link it to the answers that you just gave a while ago about what is listening. And some of you wrote down being open, understanding. And as you can see, even though that is not the definition of listening, it does have to do with it. So the question is, who do I need to become to be a better listener? And we ask this question is not for nothing written down like this. Who do I need to become to be a better listener? Not who do you need to become so that you can listen better to me. So we're not going to point fingers. We're always going to look at ourselves when we talk about leadership and about communication. And one of the ways is by being open to understand each other. So how do we do that, or why is that important? That's important because, as we said in the beginning, and that's the basis of everything, we live in different bubbles. We live in different worlds. And because of that, we need to understand that the other person is perceiving what I'm saying from their own perspective. We need to start listening more than to just words. We listen to, or we interpret. We're going to see and interpret the body language of another person and their emotions, for instance. So then we ask ourselves, who is actually speaking? When we are the listeners and there is another person talking to us, we should always ask ourselves, who is this person? We need to become then the observer of that other person and say, well, why is this other person telling me this in this tone? Or why is this bothering this person so much? And let me just give you an example here of. Let me see if I can do that. I'm not going to be mentioning names, but in work, for instance, a person who used to be one of my bosses had a problem with the fact that I did not want to start working at 8 o'clock sharp in the morning. So I'm not a morning person. I'm definitely not. My day starts perfectly well if I start working around 8:30, 9 o'clock. And that's fine because lawyers are able to do that. We can divide our time in the way we want to, actually, as long as we met deadlines and we achieve our goals. But this person was extremely irritated, even though he knew that my work was up to speed. I always reached my goals, the targets, clients are happy. He would have a huge problem because I would not arrive 3 minutes before 8, but I would arrive at 8 o'clock in the morning. So as he was expressing the fact that he was annoying to me, I could have done two things. I could have said, you know what, I don't care about what you're telling me right now because this is just not the way I'm doing it. Or I could start to become understanding and ask myself, who do I have in front of me? And when I say who do I have in front of me, I also invite you to think about the question, where did this come from? Like, why is this person telling me this? What causes this person to tell me this? In his case, I had noticed that he loves to control everything. He is a total, if we can call it like that, a total control freak. Why? Because he's afraid that if he doesn't do that, things might not go well. And that was regardless of the fact that I was with my deadlines on time, I was happy, clients were happy, and so on and so forth. So instead of reacting heavily towards him, instead of not being able to listen to what he was going to say, it was my responsibility as the listener at that moment to be understanding towards him, because I had noticed in the past that he has the urge, the need to control what happens around him. So that openness to understand creates room for a better conversation. Creates room for saying, you know what, I understand that you feel this way. And I think it may be like this. And if not, please tell me so, because you really want to be pichu precis at everything, and you want to be in control of what happens at this office. However, and then I could carry on with the conversation. So the ability to ask this person, okay, who is this person? What is causing him to tell me this? Created in me the openness to understand him. And that created an effective communication. It increased our ability to say how we felt about what was happening, and it bettered actually the relationship. Another one is the openness to being transformed. So tell me something. How many of you, and then say yes or no, how many of you think that are able to listen to a person who you think is saying something completely wrong? Do you tend to then let this person speak until this person finishes whatever they're saying? Or do you tend to interrupt and say, well, I don't think that this is correct? Do you cut them off? Or do you start thinking about other stuff? Because you already know the answer. And you already know that this person is not right, that they're saying something which is crazy or which doesn't make any sense. And so you start thinking about whatever lunch you're going to have, or whether you're going to meet up with your friends, yes or no. Can somebody tell me whether you have been in that situation? So do you actually allow for the other person to finish everything that they're telling you? I let them finish speaking, then I tell them my opinion. Okay, so I understand that you actually hear them out completely. This is really good. I used to not do this, actually. I used to already be busy thinking about the answer, or about whatever else I was going to tell this person. Somebody else? No, I interrupt them. Okay. I think it depends. Somebody else? I think it depends whether, if they're offending, I'll interrupt. But if it's something good, like a constructive feedback, I'll let them finish. Now, if the feedback is not as constructive, but it's an okay feedback, and they're not offending you, but it just doesn't make any sense at all, would you still let them finish?
I think, like I said, it depends on the situation or what he or she is talking about. Like, if it's something that bothers me, I would totally like, okay, but with my due respect, like, this is this. So I'll like give my argument towards what the person, what the other person said. So it depends. So it depends for me. But with someone that said, "Oh no, listen, before you finish, let me say this." So it really depends on the situation for me.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And why do I ask this? Because it happens really often, and or at least it used to also happen to me, and it happens to more people, that we enter a conversation thinking that we are right, that we hold the truth. But now, actually, we're here with 26 people, and we all now know that nobody holds the truth. What does that mean to a conversation? It means that you now have the awareness and the capacity to enter that conversation, understanding that you don't hold the truth, and that you can now be open to listen to this other person fully and completely, because maybe this other person has one little thing to say, that is different than your own interpretation of the world, your own interpretation of that conversation. And when we do that, we actually enter the conversation with an openness of being transformed. Why? Because sometimes these small little details help us transform. So the being open-minded about what we are going to hear, because we know that we are not the only ones who hold the only truth, is going to increase our effectiveness when we communicate, and is going to allow us to have better conversations. And at the end of the day, it's going to affect in a very positive way our leadership skills. So the third one, C, is being present. It's trying to put all the thoughts, this chit chat going on in your mind, as making that as silent as possible. Why? Because we're having thoughts the whole day. It goes like super, super fast, even when we're having a conversation with a person. Because maybe we're not fully present, we're not fully quiet, and we start thinking about the exam that I'm going to have, and the lunch, and whether I should be telling my mother that she shouldn't call me that often, and so on and so forth. So it's super important to quiet down that chit chat so that you can actually perceive everything that the person is telling you. How did that person move their body? What was the tone of their voice? Were they emotional? What was their facial expression? Which words did they use? Which may contain information which is so revealing to you, so that you understand who they are. Right. Now, because we all live in all of these bubbles and different worlds, there is a gap between the person who's saying something, the speaker, like the slide that we just saw just now, and the listener. And there are a few strategies to do that. And here they are. The first one is give sufficient information or voice concerns. Share. If you want to be a great leader, if you're delegating, you need to give the other as much information as you can about this subject that you're talking about. For instance, if you are developing or you're working on a project and you're in a team of 4 people, you're the leader of that team, and you need to delegate and tell the other person, well, I need you to make a Excel sheet with X and so information, and that needs to be done by Saturday morning. You want to give this person, when you tell the person or give the person the delegation, you want to give the person as much as information as possible, so that that person can actually understand fully what you're saying. So now, because we take the role, we only have most of the control on ourselves. We want to, when we speak, make sure that we help the other person to become a better listener, and we close the gap between us and the other person. So giving enough information would be, you know what, I want you to, even the smallest things, I want you to make the Excel sheet, and I want to have the right column in color, in a red color, the middle one in yellow, the other one in green, because I want to be able to distinguish the information really fast. I'm very visual. That is very important for me. And if you don't do that, I won't be able to read it properly. So you're sharing a concern. You can also tell the person, you know what, once you do this, make sure that you write if you're working with names, you write down the first name first and the last name second, because I want to organize this sheet in an alphabetic order, and I want you to place therefore that first, the names in the first row. This is all information that is going to help the other person listen better to you and actually achieve that goal that needs to be achieved in a much faster and better way. Because what happens if you don't give this person all the information that is important to you? You're going to end up with a result that you may not be able to use, or you're going to have to finish it yourself. So that's one. Second one, verifying. When you are the speaker and you know that the other person is the listener, again, you want to close the gap between you and the other person. And because you are in control of what you are saying, the tip and the strategy is to ask the other person, can you please summarize what I've just said, just to check if we are on the same page? So the other person is going to tell you, oh, okay, you just told me that for instance, with regard to the example that I just gave, okay, you just told me that you wanted to organize the information on the Excel sheet in an alphabetic order, and you want the columns to have different colors because it's important for you to see the difference between the columns right away. If the person tells me that, then I'm sure that that person has understood me properly. But I am the one who needs to verify that. Why? Because I am the one who is in control of what I can do. And that means that I'm going to influence this conversation so that the conversation becomes more effective and that my leadership skills at the end are better. Why? Because our results need to be better as well. Third one, inquire, investigate, ask questions. So an example for this is asking the other person, if you're working in a group and the other person needs to finalize information by Saturday, the first question you should ask is, do you have time? Can you make this happen? How can I support you? Do you have the right program? Do you have a laptop at home? Why? Because you're going to be able to troubleshoot right away. And even ask the other person, do you have any other questions? Is everything clear? If there's something which was not clear, can I give you more information? So these three strategies are going to help you close the gap. And this is the gap that we're talking about between the listener and the speaker. So practical tips. How often have you been in a conversation, either with your friends or in a project, even at home, where you're talking to somebody and they're looking at their phone or they have to answer a WhatsApp that just came in? Can you please write in the chat box whether you have experienced that? Because if you ask me, I think 9 out of the 10 times I've experienced that with another person. So I invite you to write in whether it's a yes or a no, that other people are actually not paying much attention. Or at least that would seem to be the case. Yes, 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 yes. The answers are coming in super fast. I guess we've all been through this, right? So the tip number 1 is put your mobile phone away. Be aware, be present in the present moment. Why? Because we need to pay attention to the details. We're not only hearing words, we're interpreting what we are seeing, what we are feeling at that moment. We need to notice whether the other person is sad or angry, or whether when they were telling us something, maybe their voice was trembling. Whether how their posture is. And we only can do that if we're really present at that moment. Don't interrupt. Reply with respect, even if you don't disagree. Why this is a tip? Because when we're in a conversation with a person who has a total different opinion than we have, we tend to be disrespectful if we're not aware. We tend not to listen because the other person is so different than I am that my level of respect goes down. Pay attention to the emotions. See how other people, whether you can notice if they're, as I said, angry or sad or ambitious about something, or happy, or very, you see that that they're willing to help, for instance. And pay attention to your own emotions to see what happens to me when I'm talking or when I'm listening to this thing that the other person has been saying. What does that do to me? Be aware of your posture and your body language. Why? Because that's part of our conversation. Our body language is as important as that what we're saying. And sometimes it's even far more important than the words you use. Make eye contact. Super, super, super relevant. Look at the other person in the eye. Try to nod when you're that, and let the other person know that you're actually paying attention. And here's why the body language is so important. In terms of impact in conversations, our body language has an impact of 55%. Only 7% are words. And the tone of our voice that has a relevance or an impact of 38%. So pay attention. Always keep your camera on. How am I doing this? With which tone in my voice? How is my body language? How is my posture at this point in time? Am I helping the other person to listen to me? Especially that last one as well, when we're the speakers. Am I helping the other person to speak? So emotions, again, pay attention and be aware of them, because they give us a whole map to actually be able to interpret what we're seeing. So this is a picture that will show us, and I'm just going to ask one question. Do you see the difference between the woman sitting down with her hands on her face, that blue picture, and the green picture? Would you interpret that differently? Just a yes or a no. Would you interpret those two pictures differently? Because the other one, to me, it's pretty clear that is extremely different than those other two. The one with the baby, she's nurturing, she's in love with her baby. I could interpret that in many, many other ways. She's loving being a mom. There is kindness, there is love. It creates certain feelings within me when I look at that picture. But those other two, that could be up for interpretation. So I see here, yes, 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 yes. For instance, just to give you an idea, to me, the picture with the hands shows frustration or rage, I would say. I have the sense as if this person is almost breaking or trying to pull that cloth or the napkin, whatever the person has in his or her hand. And the other picture where the lady is sitting down, I see there just as if the person the person is tired or preoccupied. So again, we see here that our capacity to interpret doesn't only come from words, but it comes from being able to notice what we're seeing. And when we're in a conversation, that means the body language. So what can I do? Key questions that I want you guys to ask yourselves. Why? Because we're going to go back and back again on what it is that I can do to transform myself, what it is that I can do to be a better listener and to be a better speaker so that the other person is able to listen to me. The first question is, how do I evaluate my capacity of listening to others? Am I actually listening, considering what we saw today? And I would invite you to, after this workshop, just make a list of 5 people and ask yourself how good of a listener are you when they're talking to you. And I'm going to ask you to choose 2 people who you have an extremely good relationship with, that you absolutely love, and 2 other people with whom your relationship is not that great. And I want you to ask yourselves how your capacity is to listen to these people. Who is it hard for me to listen to? What does that say about me? Why again about me? Because it's not about the other person. It's about me. What can I change in my behavior? How am I going to transform myself? Should I be more understanding to this other person? If I start thinking, what is causing this other person to treat me this way? Am I able to be open with this other person and listen to the other person, even though the other person is completely different than I am? From another perspective, the same questions, but from a different perspective, because we're always talking about the speaker and the listener. How do I evaluate that others listen to me? I would invite you to, on that same list of people, evaluate how those people actually listen to you. Who actually doesn't listen to you? Does a person who loves you extremely much can that person sit for hours and hours listening to you, whether you're making sense, yes or no? The answer to that is probably yes. What happens with somebody with whom you fight constantly with? Do you think that person listens to you? And again, what does that actually say about me? Not about the other person, but about me. Because when we talk about the other person being a listener, then we are being the speakers. So the question is going to be, what am I going to say? How am I going to say things so that our gap closes? Am I going to give more information? Am I going to be more vulnerable, maybe? Am I going to take the courage to be more vulnerable and say how I feel? And within that, keeping that list that you have and you will have just now in mind, because we only have 2 minutes, I would like you to look at this. And you will be able to grade the quality of your relationships between 1 being very bad to 5 being very good. As you can see in these circles that I have, me is in the inside. And the person being close to me is number 5. You can see it in the inner circle. That's my inner circle. The people who I have an excellent relationship with. Then comes number 4, people who I have not the greatest, but a good relationship with. Then comes number 3, neutral. We're fine with each other. Then we come to 2, it's a bad relationship. We really don't get along well. and one, a very bad relationship. So just to be able to close this properly, your best friend, that should be on a very good number 5. Are you able to listen to that other person properly? And does that person listen to you properly? Yes or no? Your best friend, number 5. The one who you're the closest with, who you tell all of your secrets. Can you just please write in the chat whether you listen or tend not to listen to the person? Most of the time. Anybody else? I tend to listen. Good. And now with a person who would be in number 1, with whom you have the worst relationship ever, a bad, very bad relationship. Do you listen to them? And do they listen to you? Can you please write in a chat box whether you listen to them and whether they listen to you with a yes or a no? No, not really. See? So this is a clear example of the relationship between the quality of your relationship, and that is going to be the quality of your conversations and the quality of or the ability of the other person listening to you and you listening to the other person. And I wanted to make this for you to understand that the way we listen to somebody impacts directly our conversations with that person, and that impacts directly our relationship with that person. And when we're talking about leadership, leadership is being able to have good relationships. And that means being able to listen to each other. And I want to leave you with this quote. Courage is what needed to stand up and speak, what is needed to stand up and speak, but it is also what is required to sit down and listen. And why courage? Because sometimes it's not easy to leave our ego behind, to be fully present, to show up in our best capacity, and to listen properly. And it may not be always easy to be open, to have understanding with a person with whom we have a very bad relationship with and who we tend not to listen. But it is courage at the same time that helps us basically get over ourselves and helps us probably show up in a different way and be more open and be more understanding, because the other person lives in a different world and you don't know which fight they may be fighting. You don't always know where they're coming from. But when there is an openness to be understanding, there is an openness to being transformed by what the other person is saying, then you're going to see that your ability to listen is going to be greater. And with time, that is going to improve your relationship with that person. It's going to have an impact on and allow the conversation to be better and the communication more effective. And where we're talking about leadership, it's going to also allow you to do leadership in an effective way. Thank you very much for listening.